Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada.
How you doing?
Good to get connected. It's been a while.
It has been.
How's the family?
Family is doing fantastic. Just finished up another birthday for one of the kiddos.
You have three, right?
I have three, yeah.
What are they, boys, girls? What do you got?
I got one boy and two girls. The youngest are girls. So oldest is 14, 11, and 5.
That sounds exactly like my spread. I got a 18, 16, and 10. What oldest is a boy?
Nice.
Girls are driving me nuts.
Oh, it's crazy. I got a 15. She's turning 16 in August, and then I got my 14-year-old boy. So we're all kind of in the same thing a little bit. To an extent.
Yeah.
So Chris, it's great to get connected with you, man. I've been hearing your name for so long, and I don't know if you know Derek, but Derek's one of my buddies that I met out at my club Drive years ago. He was working with an actor. Derek's, running mechanics coach and one of the best I've ever seen. And he was so gracious with his time. He was in town for 6 weeks and started working with my staff and just, we were like, let's do a podcast. I was thinking about starting one up, but I didn't want to do it alone. I want to do it with someone. And we just kind of, every week we jump on and we just have fun conversation. I think we bring on some really interesting people, and just gracious for your time and that you're willing to give us an hour here.
Yeah, no, I've been, like I said, we bounced against each other for so long, and looking forward to actually getting some time to chat a little bit.
Awesome. So, Derek, I think Chris is one of the most interesting people in fitness. I mean, it's pretty remarkable to hear about his background. And Chris, we just jump right into it. Hearing about his background. I mean, he's talked about it openly on his podcast. He was homeless, living in the wilderness when he was very young, all the way down to getting an engineering degree. I think it was from Oregon Tech, right, Chris? And He also is one of the only people, I think the only person, if I get this correct, to squat and deadlift over 1,000 pounds for reps. So his bars have been something that have been popping up a lot in all of my buddies' facilities. Luca Hostifer, I went out there, and Chris was nice enough to send me the Kabuki trap bar, which is by far my favorite trap bar I've ever seen. I mean, it's so balanced. It's engineered perfectly. Then I just went and I ordered the Duffin bar, which I'm very excited to get. And my next is I'm just going to go order that safety squat bar, and I'm getting rid of all my bars now to replace them with yours. So great stuff.
You're getting it. Yeah. It's really interesting. People think of them. It used to be specialty bars when really we've gone in and engineered these to be better biomechanically sound replacements. So basically taking fundamental, like functional fitness, bars, handheld weights, things like that, and actually building them to be able to accommodate for the individual, the differences in their lever links, their differences in their mobility restrictions, to be able to get and respect the individual, get the joints in the right position. And it's not just, people miss the point. It's not just the physically like positioning the joints and the stacking that happens, but when we do that, as well as get the right kind of balance components in there, it changes the neurological inputs to the brain, which then changes like the muscle tension, but obviously you're changing the weight tension relationship when we're putting the joints in the right position, right? Got a lot of stuff going, but it's amazing when you can put something in somebody's hands. You don't have to explain the science, and they're like, I haven't benched for 5 years because of shoulder pain, X surgeries, so on. Can't take an empty bar to my chest without pain. And they'll load up 2 plates and be doing reps by the end of the workout. And they go, what kind of freaking black magic is this?
Well, I think the best example, not to cut in quick, I want to kick it back to you, but the best example I can give, it's like anyone can get in a car, right? Like, and if you were exposed to I don't want to say low grade, but like a vehicle that is more about cost, right? It's a lower value vehicle, and you drive around in it your entire life, you're not going to know any different. And I think that's what most people are exposed to when they're training at clubs. And mean to throw them under the table, but like an Equinox, a Crunch, a New York Sport Club, they're not going out there and they're not searching for great bars. So when most people are grabbing a bar and they're benching, they're used to feeling what they're feeling. But when you sit into a high-end Mercedes or a Bentley or a Maybach for the first time and you ride it, you're like, oh, that's what they're talking about. And I think that's the best way to describe the difference between your bars and a traditional bar.
Yeah, and it's really, really interesting because the people that get it, like, we've honestly penetrated sports performance faster and deeper than any company in history. And that sounds like a bold statement, but we work with every single Major League Baseball team and about 90% of the NFL, the NBA. The NBA itself buys our products when they're doing the training centers when they were doing all them training together during the pandemic or competing. We have 800, 900 colleges, every big name school. A lot of these top sports stars are buy at our stuff. Like you go to people that like Dwayne Johnson, he's got 8 of our bars. He got in the habit of like, if there wasn't one there, he would have one next day aired there because he's got a squat day or a leg workout, and it's the only bar you'll ever see on his back for a squat, a walking lunge, anything like that. So, those people are researched. They understand the stuff that we present, and they talk to each other too. It's like results speak, right?
100%, Derek.
And so a lot of this stuff, the development, Chris, has been kind of your personal journey in going like, hey, there's a better way to do this. Is it been out of necessity for you or curiosity, all of the above?
Yeah. So there's a lot of depth to that, and it almost ties to the backstory Don was giving a little intro on how I have so much passion to always be trying to pursue being better. How I truly believe that fundamentally done right, adding stress to oneself in appropriate manners is going to help us live a better quality of life. That adaptation is king, right? But we need to do it in the right ways, because in my growth and upbringing, I've seen it the wrong ways and it destroys people. So we'll just take a quick, maybe step back into the backstory if you want.
Love to.
And then we can refine that as it relates to the physical realm and stuff that we're talking about. But I'll do the elevator pitch version. But yeah, I did essentially grow up homeless in the wilderness. This is in Northern California, Eastern Oregon. And it wasn't just like homeless, like, living in tree forts and tents and things of that nature, but it was dealing with murderers. It was dealing with drug trafficking. It was dealing with a serial killer. It was dealing with human trafficking that directly affected my family. And if you have any questions about like the depth of that, they do have a best-selling autobiography on it, but go watch the documentary on Netflix, Murder Mountain. I was 50 miles deeper and more remote. So when we talk about corruption of police, serial killers, people running around with machine guns, it was freaking wild. And that was the upbringing I was in. So I saw a lot of bad things. We were actually taken from our parents from the wilderness and put into homes. Like I said, that was kind of related to some human trafficking stuff. Got out of that like a year later, ended up in Oregon. And at that point, my parents decided to stay out of the drug trade. They didn't want to lose us again. And so, but they quickly fell back into the same stuff, except we were now cutting wood, mining, just not being part of society for the most part. And so that was my upbringing. And to get out of that, I ended up putting myself into college on a full ride scholarship for academics. I was supposed to be an athlete as well. I was a pretty decent athlete, but the school I went to didn't have those programs. And quickly I found out a couple of years in that things at home deteriorated a lot faster without me being there. So over the course of while working on my dual engineering degree, working full time, I ended up taking custody of my 3 younger sisters and raising all of them. And I raised all of them as I finished that, started my career, worked on my master's degree, and started doing things in that realm. So that's the underpinnings of like why I'm so such a passion driven person, and I end up, as it relates to like this engineering aspect and the creativity and the lens around that, I was continued to be very athletic. I started training at 11 years old, and it was to counterbalance being the quiet, smelly kid, that whatever you want to put on the reasons, but those are the reasons I was pretty driven, and I just had a very physical upbringing. It was packing rocks out of ravines. It was cutting wood. I mean, that was my life. And the only thing that we had to do in the evenings was every month or so go and get a giant stack of books, because it didn't have technology. And we, as a family, it was physical, and it was deep conversations and a lot of reading. My parents were too intelligent for their own good, but non-functional in society for that very reason. Kind of geniuses, but not. You see the ones that don't make it, right? And so I drove down that path on the tech side of things, and being pretty successful. So over the course of close to 20 years, I ended up the last 10 years being a turnaround expert, where I'd come in and manage the manufacturing, the engineering, and turning around aerospace manufacturing companies, automotive manufacturing, industrial equipment, high tech. This is kind of what I was sought for in the Northwest to come in and do. At the same time, I was lifting. And I was lifting, trying to be the strongest person in the world. Yeah, maybe I'm a little bit kind of like overdriven because of my upbringing and needing to prove something to everyone in the world. Okay, I can see that, right? But that's what I did. And so to your question, the reason, so this is the reason I was pushing myself so hard, because I was pushing myself so hard, I started breaking. And this is where I'm like, I know in my experience in my career that trying to be the smartest person in the room doesn't deliver anything, that you can do so much more through others, through relationships, through networking, doing so many. And so I started seeking out and trying to find some people to help me understand why I was having this string of surgeries and injuries, and up connecting, just keep leveling like introduction to introduction. And I ended up meeting and taking seminars, and then eventually speaking with, as I started attending the seminars, the likes of Dr. Craig Liebenson, Dr. Stu McGill, Dr. Kelly Starrett, like so many of these people that are now like very close personal friends. I did hint. I was taking Dr. Craig Liebenson. He brought dynamic neuromuscular stabilization from the Prague School of Medicine in the US, right? And in this course, my second or third one in, he impromptu asked me to do a little piece, and I put on this 2-hour piece that everybody loved. And next thing you know, I know all the Prague instructors I speak. And so it just like kept bombarding, but this gave me a really crazy lens. I'm going somewhere with this. It's not just to toot my horn and brag a little bit, or it's like, I want you to understand the backstory for this stuff, but
we love it.
I ended up, what's that?
We love it. Keep it going.
Okay. So what I ended up with is this lens of being, at this time I was ranked number 1 in the world 8 years straight for powerlifting, the squat, the deadlift, and the total. I'd been doing clinical education now for years. I had 2 engineering degrees and was a kind of an operations professional. And I started having this lens of like, I don't think that a lot of other people had, right? Because it's like top tier level athlete trying to recover from big surgeries, trying to be the best in the world at that, compiling this education. I think I ended up taking clinical courses and stuff for about 10 years on developmental kinesiology, neurology, so on. And then, I've got a couple engineering degrees. I'm very skilled in this arena. And that does play into the role of the human, right? And so I owned a gym because I wanted to be the best. And so on the side of everything, so I was running the aerospace company at the time. I opened the gym with my business partner, Rudy Cadlub. And just, I was like, the equipment's not right. We need the right equipment, we need the right methods, and we need the right environment for people around us. And that last one ended up expanding into a larger impact, but that's the community. And so those are the 4 fundamental values that Kabuki Strength stands on. right? It's equipment, it's education as it relates to methodology, right? It's the internal mindset. That's the squat face, like getting your game day face on. That's our representation of it. And then there's our impact within this on the community within the strength world. And that is the values behind our company. And that's the depth with which they come from. So long story. I know I went on a rant for a long time, but I just wanted to understand where this came from and why like all these kind of things came out of left field and why you didn't see products like the Transformer bar beforehand. You saw different revisions of a multi-grip football bar, Swiss bar, whatever, since the 1970s, and they all sucked. Nobody thought to do something basic like, hey, well, let's put the load below the center of mass, below center of rotation, not just also, and then, hey, oh, not all the angles need to be the same. Like you have a different internal and external rotational bias, but you got to leave a little bit left for external cueing for stability to tie the shoulder into the core. Like just these small little nuances all stack up, and that's where this stuff came from.
Derek?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Like, you know, because I'm in a room here and I have 3 conventional barbells, and I'm like, oh dang, I gotta up my game. But what are some of the main problems with the conventional barbell and dumbbell, like in your opinion? Like, because I'm turning 54. When I bench press, I have shoulder pain, and I'm like, I guess I was just more resilient when I was younger, or maybe my body was more pliable to make up for these deficits in this equipment.
Yeah. So a great example there. You're only 54. My training partner just turned 74 a couple of days ago. He's going to be deadlifting 524 pounds, 5'2" for 7, as for his birthday. That's his birthday thing. But we started training together at around 58 or 59 for him, and he's continued to get stronger. Last year, he did an event, competed, and he did the same event, I think it was 12 years ago, in multiply, like squat gear, shirts, so on. And he beat that last year ago, at the same exact event. He beat all those numbers. He's the strongest septuagenarian ever recorded, by the way. He has 2 shoulder replacements and would not even be able to train with it. So I'm going to dive into the tech of the changes in the barbells, but here's the important thing to understand, right? If we are made of materials, and it does not matter whether it's biological materials, man-made materials, everything has a limited loading capacity. And that capacity and our recovery ability, if we're putting non-adaptive stress on the system, we're consuming some of our recovery ability that could be going towards the adaptive nature. So the better we get at reducing those and refining the loading to adaptive, the better our recovery resources are going to be. That sounds really complicated, except for we're going to simplify this down to the basic 19-year-old bro science here. If you do this, you can train with a higher level of frequency, a higher level of volume, and a higher level of load or intensity. You will get bigger, stronger, faster, hands down. I can pack and train in whatever fashion, any of those variables more. I can come back to a workout sooner, okay, because of doing that. So let's take a traditional barbell on your back. We put the traditional barbell on our back. It causes a huge external rotational demand on the shoulder complex, big strain on the bicep tendon insertion into the shoulder. A lot of the stress that people feel or pain while benching is often actually related to their squat day, not from their benching. As we're doing that and fighting that, and we lose it, and particularly if we're losing mobility, what's going to happen is you flare at the chest a little bit, and now we've got a disconnect between the diaphragm relationship to the pelvis. When we do that, we're not able to create as much internal stability, because how those structures work all together is that diaphragm descends. It causes a co-contraction, not only of the pelvic floor, but of the thoracolumbar musculature, all the surrounding tissue. And when we have a spike and we change like the length tension relationship to the abdominal muscles overextended, the lumbar muscles, in a retracted state, let alone that equal balance of pressure. It's very simple. Just lean back, extend, and try to inflate and feel the difference between having a stack position, inflating and filling, right? So now this is having an impact not only on our shoulder position, but now it's having an impact on our low back, right? As we have that breakdown, it's going to affect, what is going to affect? A lot of the downstream stuff as it relates to knees, so on. I mean, so the things just start to cascade if we don't allow, and we're having to fight, let alone teaching the technique to get all that. Because again, that's somebody that really understands all these concepts and goes, okay, all right, got to have proper relationship, pin, expand, got to get this in position just enough. Boom, we still got to engage the lat to pull the shoulder into the core, like all this stuff. So Major League Baseball, I mentioned. So the transformer bar takes care of, well, a lot of things. Let me talk about that in just a second. But Major League Baseball, they have a huge population of people coming in for the Dominican Republic. Great skill. All they got to do is get more resilient, but they have no training experience. They can use a transformer bar with specific settings to ensure and not have to teach a new skill in the weight room and have risk of injury in that as well. So the transformer bar is really unique. It looks like a safety squat bar, and in some essences it is. It has that very specific function. It looks similar, but traditional, let's just talk about a safety squat bar. Again, nuance of detail. The handle position is way up here. Boom. Well, just with that handle position, I am in a poor position to engage my lats and have that as a stabilizer. Where do you see people miss in a lift, either fatigue or load with a safety squat bar? At the TL junction. They round over there because they have poor stability. Really basic fundamental stuff. We go, hey, we've got somebody post-surgery, the shoulder injuries, let's put that on there. Well, we may have a de-innervation problem because it's just going right on the trap. Ours inside the pad is formed and it actually rolls and distributes the load. That's why it feels so comfortable. So it's actually loading all the way around and through the back. So minor nuances of that is just like, okay, let's get the hand in the right position so the right things can happen, right? Let's distribute the load. Now let's talk about what the transformer actually does. The freeing up of space and moving. We're not actually moving the load. The load is always staying over the midfoot. Really basic physics. It's staying over the midfoot. So what are we doing? We're manipulating the spine. So I'm creating more of a hinge pattern or more of an uprighting pattern. So I can take a movement that why does every newbie trainer throw a kettlebell in somebody's hands and have them goblet squat? Well, it does the things that we're talking about, right? It automatically creates pelvis to diaphragm relationship. It cues that stabilization, those muscles to come on, right? That load in the forward causes some spinal uprighting. So their butt wink, their rounding of their low spine goes away. And then they go, okay, now just do that on a barbell back squat. It's a different lift.
Yeah, you can load it, and you know better than anyone, and I'm not telling you anything that you don't know already, but the downside of the kettlebell squat, the goblet squat, it's just how much can you load on that? I mean,
it's a teaching exercise. It's a bicep and front delt limiting exercise. It's amazing from a load position standpoint in a teaching and cueing. But you take a 7 foot tall NBA player that everybody laughs at because their squat's bad. Look at their lever links. You can't put everybody is meant to be, every able-bodied person is meant to be able to squat through a full range of motion, but not specifically with a weight in one exact point, a large mass. That's the thing that's missing, right? And Chris, so we need to be able to move.
Let me ask one quick question, because you just, I mean, it's so brilliant, but some people who don't know training, and they obviously don't know, no one's going to know engineering the way that you know when it comes to this stuff. They're going to think that some of these bars are acting as a crutch, where the reality is you're putting them in more of an advantageous position to be more successful. And you'll probably not only be safe, I know you're going to be safer, you're going to get stronger in the long run than if you were, because most of us, and that's been the downside of the back squat. It's like, how many people, like even me, like I back squatted for years, not a great back squatter. I've always fought my own mechanics a bit. And though it looks good on video, things don't feel right afterwards.
Yeah. So now we can load. You're going to not have the bad pains. You're going to feel the good soreness, not the bad soreness. We'll just leave it at that simple explanation, right? We all know the difference. And you're going to be able to recover from that, get back to it, load a little bit more, have a workout, not be dealing with those residuals, right? You're going to get stronger. We can also go, hey, what specifically do we want to develop? Do I need more of a hinge pattern in my squat to develop that strength for my application of whatever my athletic need is? I'm not saying one is good at it. We can actually refine it to what it needs to be, or work around those limiting, because it's crazy. Like, I'll take those NBA players. They're on the no squat squad. They usually have that, as a group of people. Here's the one belt squat that they've got over. This is the 6 people that are injury or just like suck or whatever reason, right? You see them go to squat, they're bent way over, their knees are caved in, they're 6 inches high. It's just like it hurts you to watch. Take the transformer bar, move it into a correct setting, have that same group of people go through. Don't say a word as far as coaching, and you'll see uprighting. You'll see, boom, they're sitting between their hips. You haven't even said anything about position, because it's actually not knee. Never focus on the knee position. That's an output of the hip or the foot. And then all of a sudden they're going below, like 3 inches below parallel. Like, so that range of motion. So one, we've loaded the weight in front as we've done this, which creates more of a load on the posterior chain from a torque perspective through it. So we're getting more posterior chain development, but the enhanced range of motion, we're getting more interior. So we're getting more effects from a less load, and actually getting posterior and anterior working together. Maybe that's athletic, you're right. So it's phenomenal what you can do with these movements. You can struggle with somebody that's can't quite understand. You've gone through, pushing the drawer back or any different cues, trying to teach a hip hinge. You can actually put load on that, change the position that essentially forces a hip hinge to happen. You start taking, I hated good mornings. I didn't do good mornings for over 10 years because I love them from a development standpoint, but risk reward was not there for me. With the transformer bar, I do them all the time now, because that shear stress, the positioning, that dissipates, and it loads the hamstrings and glutes. If you haven't tried this, you got to try this when you get your transformer in. It just feels amazing the way it kicks into those muscles, and yet you don't got that sheer kind of stress feeling on the low back.
Derek, I'm going to kick it to you, but I just wanted to ask one quick thing. Chris, have you noticed when training with your bars, because I've been fortunate enough to train with them, and I'm fortunate enough to see, it's like I said, it's like driving a Bentley. It's like, until you do it, you don't really know the difference between a Toyota and anything else. And that's all you've been exposed to.
Our best sales is definitely like, once you experience it, you're like, oh, no, I got it.
I can't live with anything else. But have you seen any success with training with your bar for, say, years? Like, you're a prime example, and then you go travel to train on a non-Kabuki bar, and you've noticed that, positioning has improved, or things that might have felt like a parking. I always refer to it as like when you're training at times and you're loading dysfunction, it's almost like you're driving with a parking brake on. Do you feel like that parking brake has been released with those traditional lifts with a traditional bar?
Yeah, and we actually do this in a competitive manner as well. So like Rudy, that's what he does, because he still is forced to compete on a traditional bar, but his training isn't until it gets close, because over the course of the year, he's not accumulating those residual stresses that's beating up his joints, his ligaments, those less adaptive structures, and his technique is staying refined. We're cueing. We've got the right synapses going through the nerve channels, all this going. I did the same thing. The current products on the market weren't out. I had my own welded up products, by the way, that I had done so that I could get things. I had my own Duffin bar back in the day. I had formed this stuff because that's what I did to compete, and that was kind of the genesis for Kabuki. Is like, maybe we need to make something more adaptable and get it to market. But I would train year round with those products, and you can go back in all my video logs and see it. And then 4 weeks before a competition, switch to that lift, because I would be able to train higher loads, higher intensities, and still, like, my biggest feats, my 1,000-pound deadlift for reps was at 39 years old. my 1,000-pound squat for reps was at 43, I think 43 years old. So yeah, it was 4 years between those. You know, I definitely was a stronger individual. Without it, I don't want to say genetics don't come, like that's not realistic. Like I recover better, I'm highly driven. Not everybody's going to be able to just go do that stuff, right? Absolutely not. But I didn't do it at 25. I didn't do it at 30. I had to develop this over time. It accumulates, right? But I was still able to do it. Rudy's gotten stronger from 59 to 74. So yes, absolutely. When you go bench with a Cadillac bar, this is what so like the Cadillac bar, oftentimes people hit a stage in their development where, and you guys know this, your bench just quits moving. Like you're stuck like with the same PR within a 5-10 pound range for like 5 years. You're like, dude, how many training cycles can I go through trying to like move this forward? And I don't. I'm like, go train with a Cadillac bar for 6 weeks, come back and it'll be moved forward. And it'll feel like it's cheating with that straight, because you're just like short range. It enhances that because you've gotten stronger. We're allowed your body to get stronger.
Derek?
Not a crux at all.
No, 100%. I'm agreeing. I love it. Derek?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, Chris. I just went to your site and looking at all the bars, very impressive. You also sell standard barbells. Is there a periodization of like, how much should I use the modified bars versus getting back if I'm going to compete using a standard barbell? Have you figured that out in terms of a frequency of training with these different devices to make sure that they're prepared?
There's a bit of variability there. I can definitely speak to that. So 4 weeks is what I usually tell people. I have some 50, 60 plus year olds that tell me they're high level, I just can't do it. They don't use a straight bar till the day of the meet. They just will not put themselves under that. I don't recommend that.
Yep.
Because there's some level of like getting used to those little differences. Like it's a sport. You need to do sport specific training. Okay. But there's always a place for a straight bar for different movements, but that's where the trap bars come in, honestly. I hate calling it a trap bar. You've experienced that multi-grip bar with it being open the way it is allows you to do nearly every barbell exercise there is in a better fashion. Even the overhead press. Oh my God. I can't do overhead presses very well because I've got bad elbows from earlier in my career. I've had 3 surgeries, but that one, I don't have to worry about moving my head out of position, getting out of position with flare my chest, nothing like that. You can do ab rollouts on it. Bent over rows, the bar doesn't get in your, like, I could do seal rows on a bench. It doesn't interfere with the bench. Like the list goes on. I want to do curls. You actually get a greater range of motion with the curls because you're not running into it. Like having the frame removed makes that the best multi-purpose barbell there is. And you get to a point of like, there isn't that much application for a straight bar once you start playing with these items. I actually don't have a straight bar in my home gym. Well, I do. I have one straight bar with an end removed because it's in my landmine. And I just I found we had a bad bar. And so I'm like, I don't need that end. And I stuck it in my landmine.
Well, let me ask something quick. So I know you've been out of transformer bars for a while, right? Like I'm on the list when you get them.
So they will be shipping around the beginning of May. So we've added, Rogue has tooled up their manufacturing. They were supposed to be out January 1st, but the owner Rogue had to come back and say, well, the bar's a little bit more involved than I thought it was on the outset. So they've got a production line queued up and we've got one queued up and we're going to be dual producing it. And they have a pretty significant capacity. So we're going to be fulfilling all orders and shipping is going to be in a very short period of time. So yeah. What was your question though?
So I mean, looking at the Duffalo bar, which, when I met you, you were using that as the squat and it makes sense to why, right? Like I get it, but the Cadillac bar, which in a way has a very similar shape to the Duffalo bar, you could still bench with the Duffalo bar, right? I mean, that's like a multi.
Yes.
Why would you?
Designed so
Yeah. Why would you use the? I'm sorry to interrupt, but what's the Cadillac bar going to do over the Duffalo bar besides hand position? Is it more of a range? Can you explain?
So the Duffalo bar is more of your multi-use barbell. That's the difference. So the Duffalo bar can use for any squatting variation and any pressing variation. The transformer bar is a step up in improvements, but it is only for those movements. The Cadillac bar is a step up for that, but it's only for those movements, right? So the Duffalo bar, and this is kind of really interesting. So there's other curved bars out there. I got to publish some of the reviews that now people are using the other ones and comparing, because there's a difference between a curved bar and actually having one that was designed to, cover the scope of the scapula and get these effects. There's a certain angle at the tip here. There's a certain angle as it bends down, because for pressing, for example, say I'm out in front of me, that bar is going to be curved upwards, right? So this part of my palm is got to be up here. And if you do this to reach with this, it cues external rotation. So it does a lot of the same stuff immediately. So there's a 10-degree angle right there. So that the arc, the angle, just forming it, bending a bar isn't going to necessarily net the results that we get with this barbell. We want that bar not to have, so if you do a single bend, which is what most people would do, we want to have it roll straight across the scap a little bit and then arc down. We don't want to have that peak up, right? There's a few different dynamics there. And then just think about that from a front squatting perspective. The curvature of the bar makes the bar not roll. So you're not chasing the bar. A lot of times you see deviation in pattern when people are chasing as it's starting to roll a little bit. The angle again, that 15 degrees, you go to reach it with your position. It's going to cue the rack position automatically with your hands, or it doesn't roll. Like me, I can't get in there anyway because of my elbow range. I've gone up to, well, I won't say 700 because I lost the video of that one, but 650, I think, or 675 pounds. There's plenty of videos floating around. Front squats, zombie style, because the bar doesn't roll. And so you're able to maintain position holding that. So front squat, back squat, low bar, high bar.
Wait a second. Is that so you can do a
benching, overhead pressing,
and that's with the Duffalo, and that's with the Duffalo?
That's the Duffalo.
Oh, so you can Frankenstein with it, and you're not going to roll if you're in a Frankenstein, right? In a zombie Frankenstein position. Wow.
Yeah.
Obviously, the downside of the that's been said. I'm sure you could probably could you Zercher with it or no?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really nice with the Zercher again, because it's not going to want to roll down your arms. The load's just going to go straight down. So there's so many just subtle little things that make a big difference in a lot of different movements. So the Duffalo bar is your multi-purpose barbell. And I use that for my big squat because I wanted most of the appearance of what a normal back squat would be. So people, because again, that's going to go out, a big broad audience is going to see that, especially when the documentary comes out. And the less of the, well, that's just some weird bar, it's super easy type discussion, which when you lift, you realize it's not. It's actually going to be substantially harder depending on how you set it up. One of the hard settings, I think my best is 550 for a triple on the goblet squat extreme position. So comparatively speaking, you can make that bar super hard with significantly less load. But that's why I did that. But because I wasn't going to use a straight bar. I'm just not going to do that. I don't compete. I just don't have the desire to put my body through that. Why?
Derek?
Yeah, this is fascinating, Don and Chris, because now I'm thinking, dang, I got to get some new bars in here so I can train a little harder now. Has there been any ways that you found out to measure the difference? Like I've been talking to some force plate companies about some different things that I'm doing, but has anybody use science and technology to evaluate the changes and how you've done this weight shift with some of these bars? I'd be interested in that too, if you've delved into that.
Yeah, there has. So we've done a bunch of work with Driveline Baseball up in Seattle in their biomechanics lab. I've done some work with the LA Dodgers as well. We have EMG. We're working with an EMG development company, and they're doing so it's not an actual study per se, like we've done at Driveline, but we're able to see the differences in the activation And then for a long time, because we've pioneered like the use of measuring velocity as it relates to not the speed of movement, but programming around how much we can lift. So tapping into the nervous system and actually programming our training loads based on the speed. Anyway, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent there, but you can see the differences in it with the velocity as well with the use of the bars. So yes, we validated it. Via the visual management with driveline baseball. I think there's a few other colleges that have done some work, EMG and just straight bar path,
Nice.
management.
So yes, we consistently see that.
Very cool.
It's funny. It almost, I mean, I remember, when, I learned about Westside Barbell 100 years ago, and I read the manual that Louis wrote, which is, obviously interestingly written, the original manual, but he really, he chimed in some interesting points when it was getting down to prepping for a competition. And he spoke a lot about, I'm going to reiterate this because our listeners aren't probably going to know about this, but, when prepping for a squat, like he was having people do a lot more good mornings, and he was having them do a lot of, wide stance box squat, vertical knee tibia, getting into those positions. He was having a board pressing, chain pressing, getting into that max effort, dynamic effort. And in a way, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but you're really trying to teach people to train in a safer, more advantageous position where they're going to get stronger in positions where, as you know, most people don't understand this. When you load dysfunction, there's going to be a fucking huge problem here. Yep. Like there's like, let's just like, and I just could cringe hearing this. Like, oh, I can't do a bodyweight squat, but when I put weight on my back, I can get in a position. You're like, what the fuck? Like, come on, man, you're loading dysfunction here. You're teaching people to get out of that dysfunctional position, eliminating injuries, right? And you're getting them stronger. I mean, there's a reason why I've, you were kind enough to send me one bar. I purchased that Duffin bar. I'm waiting to be able to order that Transformer bar, and hell yeah, I'm going to order that Cadillac bar. I mean, this isn't by mistake, but can you get into for a second? Why is it a lot of these equipment companies, and there's companies I work with that I absolutely love, and they're very kind to me. I'm not bashing anyone, but when you get onto a piece of equipment, holy shit, it's like sometimes, and I'm not talking about Life Fitness of the companies I work with because they're fantastic, but there has been companies I've gotten onto their equipment, and it's almost like it reminds them getting into a car with square tires. It doesn't make sense. Biomechanically, the settings are off. You can't train in a correct range of motion. It just doesn't feel right. How are a lot of these companies not nailing it?
There's not as much, we'll call it vertical integration in the development and manufacturing of equipment, right? So equipment is, being a manufacturer, you need to be an expert at being able to produce materials and processes. That's not the same person that's using the equipment, and oftentimes not the same person that's designing. So the person that's using is then reaching out to the designer and saying, hey, can you design this? The designer is then reaching out to a manufacturer and going, can you make this? And so there's these big disconnects, and then there's that minor nuance of stuff, like it gets dropped in this like long process. And that's where a lot of this comes from, because the lack of, it's just different skill sets in different areas. Some companies are a lot more integrated and built off of that. So like our company is principle based. Our equipment isn't to look and go, how can we sell equipment? What is everybody else doing? What does the market tell us? That one's moving. Let's make one of those. Let's revise and create another Swiss or multi-grip bar because they've been around. We need one in our portfolio because we can sell it. We don't do that. We look at the principles of movement and then look at what are the gaps. All right, there's clearly a broken piece right here. We can design a solution to fill that. So it's a different perspective. So we have our manufacturing facility. We have next to that our coaching and education team, because we're actually developing curriculum, teaching both trainers, clinicians, and the end athlete as well. We're working with those people, And so that they stay current as they're working with people either globally or working on curriculum, they're also training clients, and they're training them in what we call the lab, which is our gym, which is where we take our products and refine and validate it with our coaches and educators who are active leading people in the industry, not just, hey, we designed it, we're going to find this local gym and go ask for their feedback. There's a CrossFit box around here, so on. We've gotten we've gone through this process. There's a big difference between that and actually reaching out to somebody like you guys and being involved in the process and so on. And that's where we have on our website, if you're clicking in there, go click on our advisory board and you'll see we've got leading physical therapists, chiropractors, developmental kinesiologists, one of the best orthopedic surgeons in the world, like some of those top sport coaches that we talked about. Those are the people that not only just put their name behind us, but those and others that we look to when we go, hey, is what we're doing here makes sense? Is our thought process? We test it in-house. Here's this, let's change that a little bit. And so there's a number of companies, like Life Fitness is a large company with a great amount of educational professionals on board. And, they're driving a lot of that. But again, you can kind of see the gap between a product-based company and, a principle-based company as it comes to movement. And that's the uniqueness that we bring to the industry, is taking that to the extreme with having like this cohesive view of how we view movement from both the, all the way from the, I will say corrective, but correct movement is corrective, and that's what we want to load to begin with and not go there. But this kind of rehab, return to play, clinical to full, like high-end level, strength training for elite athletes across multiple disciplines. Right. This is the realm that we play in, and that helps us create products that I believe actually are for everybody, including your 65-year-old grandmother that's never touched a weight in her life. And we'll get those in our clinic, in our gym, because we have a clinic attached as well. We do all this live. And, they'll work through that aspect of it and then end up going out to the floor and starting to learn to deadlift with a kettlebell or a Q-bell.
100%. Derek?
Do you have to, you probably don't even care, but do you have naysayers who say like, oh, I'm a traditional weightlifter and you're making it too easy for people? Like, do you ever run into those types of people and have to change your mind?
We run into those people, yes. When I first started this, it was a lot of people in the strength realm, because they're so used to getting presented with new novel ideas, where not realizing, no, we're sticking to the basic fundamental proven stuff, but we're going, there's still a better way with it. There's still a better way than going, here's just something completely out there. We want to completely displace that and go with, I don't know, whatever super shiny thing is completely different. Got to change all your training to standing on just the vibration plates and like a 5-pound dumbbell, like that moves around. I don't know. They're used to getting presented with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's always no. But the results have proven themselves. And so that has changed significantly. But yeah, you're always going to get that. That's just the reality of it. It's not necessarily our job to be able to change all those minds.
Right. So Chris, you've been so gracious with your time so far, and I know Derek and I are messaging each other. We could sit on with you for hours, but what's next from a product development standpoint?
Yeah. So we've gone through the course of a lot of the barbells. There's a few things left. Our Q-bell is absolutely fascinating what you can do with it once you start playing with it. We've got the flywheel trainer, which handles a lot of the scope of cable, multi-movement, and dynamic stuff as it relates to athlete. The next step is continuing to raise market awareness on those last two, because they are very new in the market. But now is, how do we create kind of the larger portfolio of all the accessories and pieces within that helps support, using a Q-bell in a cost-effective manner, and on the flywheels, being able to have the attachments for a rower for your cardiovascular, a seated position for doing leg extensions or curls, things like that, making that easier. And then it comes into how do we actually look at holding our handheld weights and our barbells and all that, because everybody does the exact same thing.
Right.
And I'll tell you, it's just a matter of slowly working through the gym from beginning to end and reinventing it based on those principles. And where there's no need for invention, we're not going to just create something to sell it. That's just why. If it works, it works. But we're looking through that whole aspect, and I can tell you for dang sure, I think that there's some significant changes that could be handled in racking and the approaches with management of weights.
Derek, that's a big problem I'm seeing in a lot of different industries. It's not even just fitness, but you create something, or a company creates something that really makes an impact, right? And let's say they're successful and they sell 20,000 units, right? Well, now they start trying to get so creative, and they start creating a whole bunch of shit, in my opinion, where the reality is you've got something really magical. You need just to put more firepower, more gasoline, more marketing dollars behind that. And you've got to, get it out to the masses a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I think that's our focus. I'm worried my computer's going to shut down because my camera problem is something with my docking station. Okay.
No, don't worry. Let's just close out. Can you tell everyone really quick? And by the way, my Duffalo bar is on order. I can't wait to get it already. I'm like biting my fingernails. Can you let everyone know where they can find you, where they can learn more about Kabuki quick?
Yeah. So just Kabuki Strength, KABUKI strength.com. You can find us on social media. Myself, I'm pretty easy to find. Just type in Chris Duffin. It's like muffin, but you replace the M with a D, okay? And I'll pop up. I know you can buy the little blue checky things and whatnot right now, but I'm pretty easy. I'll be one of the first ones. Usually it's under the name Mad Scientist, something like that. So Instagram, Facebook. I don't do a whole lot on TikTok, but I'm there. And LinkedIn for the professionals and stuff that I work with. So pretty easy to find. You can find my personal website as well. There's actually some exclusive discounts, actually, if you sign up for the email list on chrisduffin.com. So CHRIS, what is it? Muffin with a D, Duffin.com. And you'll be able to find out about all the things that I do and links to all those things.
Well, Chris, hit me up when you're in New York. I still want to get that day where we shoot some content and we get together. You let me buy you lunch a little bit, and we'll I'll try and follow you around the gym a little bit. I ain't got no 1,000-pound squat, but we'll have some fun.
I don't lift at that level anymore. So we'll do some fun stuff. Maybe I'll bring the portable flywheel.
Yeah, we'd love to check it out.
My wife is actually looking at. We've got cheap flights to New York right now, and she's like been hitting me up, going, "We should go out there for a couple days." Well,
come be my guest. We got a spare bedroom. Come let us have some fun. All right.
Okay. I'll let her know.
All right.
Sweet.
Thanks. That was fun, guys. Derek, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris.